So this is this restaurant's version in Sevilla of tortilla de patatas. You can see the potatoes in there. It's kind of bland, so although it has a nice little crust on it. So I'd add some things like maybe parsley or spinach, probably some garlic for sure. I've just come down Velasquez from my hostel, and this is Plaza Nueva. Very pretty with those palm trees outside. I'm going to go down here to a church, which is Salvador, and get a ticket for the actual cathedral. Here's a pretty building I spotted on my way with those lovely balconies, these much wider than what we saw in Lisbon. And here Coca-Cola provides this awning to give a little bit of shade on this street. Here's Plaza San Francisco. In theory, that's a church, at least if I'm in the right spot. Pretty building up there. Notice that if a classic Christian dome, at least it's in a Muslim mosaic design. I think this is Plaza de Salvador because this is the Church of San Salvador. Very pretty. But notice this beautiful building across the street, whatever that is, or across the little plaza. To suggest this may be over the top in its spectacularness of design, I'm starting with the least spectacular. Now I'll drop down and show you the altar. And just panning to the left to look at the aisle, but look at what must be the transept left side. It's not really a chapel, not really a transept. Notice the stained glass reflection on the left pole, but you'll be unimpressed by that. Let's take a closer look at some of the detail. About just what's in this church, let alone all churches. So it's almost futile to spend your time. Notice the stained glass is not terribly impressive at all. It looks like it's something an amateur did recently. One thing interesting about this church is it once in the 700s, before the 700s, was a church. Then it was conquered by the Muslims, who dismantled part of it and built a mosque using some of these columns. And then when the Reconquista took place, which I think was in the 14th or 15th century, they dismantled part of the mosque and used some of these same columns again for this church. I'm just picking some detail here on the right side transept, if you will. It just always leaves me flabbergasted and awed how much energy, money, creative talent went into the building of these monuments to the Catholic Church. Power. Here we get a little sense of the depth of this piece. This is the left transept as you're facing the altar. Here an elaborately carved, it looks like marble, but it looks like it was done in sections. both vertically and horizontally on that top piece. No doubt is the baptismal font here. And notice a smaller inner basin for the little tyke. This will give us a sense of the depth of this particular one. I believe the literature says this was about a 17th century organ that was recently completely restored to working condition. Here's a classic narrow street, but here in Sevilla, and of course all maxed out with high quality stuff since it's right in the key tourist area. And here these buildings are beautifully done, maintained. There's a net over this ceiling now. For some reason, I think it may be because there's construction going on. I'm not sure whether it's designed to keep the dust off the ceiling or off of down here. Just gets its interest. The cathedral is the third largest in Europe, after St. Peter's at the Vatican and St. Paul in London. It's very fort-like in a way, or at least parliamentary building looking, except for the Bryce Canyon sculptures on top, which almost seem superfluous. Put there to put a bunch of stuff there. But it's the largest Gothic church anywhere. This is Francisco de Zubaran, St. John Baptist in the desert. This is King Ferdinand by Murillo. This is the painting of Santa Justa and the Santa Rufina, who are the patron saints of Sevilla. Both were potters, both were martyrs. Here the high altar is in state of restoration, ongoing for who knows how many years. And that's the Renaissance grill that Rick speaks of. First, just a quick pan of the choir. And that stained glass up there. And while we're at it, that barrel vault, kind of, well, it can't be a barrel vault if it's Gothic, so it must be Gothic. The organ above the choir includes 7,000 pipes. And here we can see some of the extraordinary sculpture, at least in silhouette. Shoot here. Down one of the transepts to the right, correction, to the right if you're facing the altar. And then just through these archways to look at that stained glass. Now we're looking down the right transept. And now through the arches looking back towards the direction of the altar, but just to focus on this stained glass. These don't look very old, but if they're what Rick was referring to, they're spinnable. In other words, they can be rotated book holders to hold the huge books that had the print, because they didn't have copies of print like we have with Xerox. This is the tomb of Columbus, carried by 5 kings. It's debated whether or not these are actually his bones, because he actually traveled to 3 other places before he ended up being here. Recently, DNA testing was done on the bones to confirm that they were in fact Columbus's. Lace work, cement work up there, if you will, if in fact it is cement. This gives us a view of both the sides of, actually, of the organ. It has 4 sides to it, actually. And here are a couple of the video shots I love to get, as they give you a sense of depth. As as well as including some interesting subject matter and that depth. Down past the stained glass, out past the organ, and now shooting deep into the church. Way back through to that stained glass window. I'm now in the Antigua Chapel, to the right of Columbus, looking at this fresco of the Virgin. Now this is the oldest art in this church, and it was actually painted on a horseshoe-shaped prayer niche of the mosque that was on this site just before this church was built. And the irony of it was the first church, I gather, that was built before the Muslims took over and built a mosque and included it in the mosque, and then they captured it from the mosque on the Reconquista and installed it here. This is the sacristy. Nothing terribly impressive. The paintings probably, that might be our two patron saints. This is a Goya painting of Julius and Rufina. This is the main sacristy, and now we're talking sacristy. You gotta love this. This is divided into 3 circles, as you can see. The first one represents those people that are in heaven, and they're the heavenly hosts. These are the people in purgatory, their hands folding, looking into heaven, hoping that somehow, some way, someone in heaven will look down and get them up into heaven. And these are the poor suckers that ain't ever going to go to heaven. They're just being gobbled up. Now looking at that guy, he's standing in flames. Those are rings of flames on the bottom of the largest ring. So he's standing in flames, being engulfed, while those devil-like creatures poke at him, taunt at him, torture him with their pitchforks. Heavy silver pieces used to parade the holy host about on special occasions. Imagine his heaven must be incredible if this is what the church felt it needed to do to impress God, or at least to reflect the glory of God. Imagine what God does in his own house. Beautiful wood door. This may be also Justa and Rufina. And I'm now guessing that they're women, although the A's at the end of their name would indicate that. I have no idea who the other 2 gentlemen are. These are probably very fancy reliquaries, particularly the silver ones. I don't know that the statues are, but the silver ones probably contain body parts. I'm guessing the church would put mine in a cardboard box. We enter a very unique oval room. Wow. Beautiful, beautiful room with an oval dome. Can you believe it? Of course, that dome centers right over this oval and this inlaid marble floor. The bishop sits there, and each month, everybody else in the church sits right here. I mean, the important people, and they make decisions and discuss blah. Gold and silver reliquaries. So if we look inside, we should be able to see something. I don't know if that's something right there or not. It's interesting, they don't even have to show you the bone, just con you into believing it's in there. And this is Spain's most valuable crown, or crowns. See if we can get some detail on that one. And presumably this is the world's largest pearl, the torso of this front angel. Here's just another look at this tracery detail, if you will. Right next to it is a contrast. Here a more impressive baptismal font than we saw earlier, or if not more impressive, at least it doesn't have a smaller basin for the little kid. He gets to have a real swim. Notice this stained glass just seems very simple, if you will. Here the pennant that flew over the city when Ferdinand III defeated the Moors and cast them out of Seville. And it was used in celebrations of that same date for many years and then put here permanently. And there behind the altar under restoration. We'll just focus on the This is Murillo's painting, the guardian angel, and it's leading a child by the hand and at the same time pointing or showing with its right hand the guiding light. Whether this epitomizes Duke's concern of the church controlling the young minds, or is a direct reference to Jesus. This is called the Altar de Plata, altar of silver. Of course, those radiations look like they're gold. So I'm going to hike up to the top of this tower, and it's called the rotating tower because there was a windmill, or not a windmill, but a willow rain on top that actually fell at one time. This is a ramp. The reason for a ramp, it's the first time I've ever seen it, was for the Muslims to go up on horseback in order to do the 5 times a day prayer thing. Since I'm new here, I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay. There's the church I walked past earlier, just before I bought my ticket over at that church that has all that red on it. A lot of bells up here. It'd be astounding to hear all of them go off, or at least a major number of them. Think of those big jobbies. All of it probably controlled electronically, so they could do it if they chose to. This should bring us full circle. And I've yet to visit the cloister, so we need to do that soon. Huh. You wonder if places like that were used. You'd think they would be. There's another huge bell and a bunch of others up there. Okay, I'm just inside the garden of the cloister. Hanging about, it's called the Grove of Orange Trees, I think. But it's an interesting mix here of what we normally think of as Christian church architecture. And this first part that I showed you, which are these keyhole archways, which is very Muslim. So this cluster of this new church, I've called that since 1200 something or other, was formerly the court of the orange trees of the Muslim mosque preserved because it's beautiful and functional. These ditches that you see here are for drainage and have been here for some time serving that purpose. And functioning as irrigation streams for the trees, they also serve to remind us that it was the Muslims who brought irrigation concept to Spain. All of the portals are done in this same manner, Gothic manner, I guess. I'm not sure what the term would be. But those series of those arches over the doorway that normally would have held sculptures. I always wonder what the ones up here, even on the front of this church, where there are sculptures below, these sculpture pedestals go up like this but hold nothing. And it doesn't look like they should have, but why bother putting the motif in? It seems illogical. Yet on the lower portions, the statues are gone. Maybe in various times they were destroyed, because here they exist. And notice that they all seem to have a color as though they were painted. And you see it inside the church. Some are this reddish color. From the 7th to the 12th century, Muslims would stop here and wash their hands and cleanse themselves, their feet and so forth, before going in to the mosque to pray. This large wooden ring with the metal, substantial thick steel ring about it was used to stabilize one of the columns, two of the columns actually, during the restoration process. And the holes that you see on the outer part of the ring had steel posts in there to provide support for the column while they worked on it. This is a scene of Jesus throwing the merchants out of the temple. But look at this very much Muslim Arab design, but it is actually Christian artwork. So the tower was actually a Muslim minaret converted into a bell tower after the last Christian takeover. And hirar means to spin or to turn. And since this has a wind weather vane on top and it turns, it's known as a hirar-iyo or something like that. I have to look at it and pronounce it. This is a pretty building with its two little towers on top, and it's pretty tile work. This is above a shop window, but pretty nevertheless. I just come from the cathedral down that way, and I'm in this park. I'm looking for Alcazar. I think it's somewhere around here, I don't know yet, till I sit down, finish my ice cream cone, and read my guide. Well, it could be that building, or collection of. That's the park I was in. This is something Telmo. Don't know what it is. Those are probably statues of explorers, I'm just guessing. And I'm just roaming around. It's a beautiful tree, isn't it? Look at the size of that. Just roaming around this afternoon. The place around here is loaded with important looking buildings. What is this? A waterway? Has that appearance, doesn't it? Probably a runway, a runoff for overflow flood water of some sort. Unless it was a moat. Look at the roots of this tree. Huh. Imagine the weight. I don't know if that's the street or the name of that building. Well, across the street to me, as I face the south more and more, is some elaborate building. Well, I'm looking down this face of this big, huge square building that appears to have a moat around it. No clue what it is yet. Looks to be some kind of a theater. Beautiful dome. This mix of Arab and Christian architecture is called Mudhar. M-U-D-H-E-A-R, J-R. Here's this dramatic archway. Not even that, it's for a water fountain, but beautiful minaret type tower in the background. And looks like dramatic gates around here. This is a large roundabout with a heroic figure in the middle there. No doubt a Muslim slayer. Following a street just because it looks pretty. To my right is a garden area behind that archway or that water fountain we just saw, and those arch type or entryway posts that we saw, or pillars.